Millionaire CEO, dining alone discovers ex-wife begging with identical quadruplets. Under the warm glow of pendant lights in a quiet Manhattan bistro, Donovan Lancaster, the famously private millionaire CEO, tapped his polished shoe against the marble floor. He tried to focus on the crisp pages of a menu, but his thoughts churned with restless urgency. The hum of subdued conversations, the gentle scrape of cutlery, none of it soothed the electric tension in his mind. Tonight, a ghost from his past was about to reappear in the most unexpected way possible. Little did he know that when the door swung open, the life he'd methodically built would collide with the one he thought he'd buried forever. Donovan Lancaster grew up on a modest street in Philadelphia, where every corner store was a lesson in struggle and hope. His father, Ambrose Lancaster, ran a small car repair shop that hardly broke even most months, while his mother, Miriam, juggled 3 part-time jobs to keep the family afloat. Night after night, Donovan did his homework in the cramped office above the garage, absorbing the sights and sounds of hard work and resilience. The smell of engine oil and metal shavings never left him. They became part of his determination to succeed. He was 13 when his mother died unexpectedly. The loss shattered Ambrose, who spiraled into depression. Young Donovan was forced to grow up faster than most kids his age. Instead of resenting the world, he resolved to break free from financial uncertainty. His mother's final words rang in his mind, "Never let your dreams die, no matter what." So he spent his high school years either in a library devouring economics books or helping out in the garage to support his father. By the time he was 18, Donovan's vision for the future was crystal clear. He'd become a force in the business world, forging opportunities that would ensure he and his family never wanted for anything. With a scholarship in hand, he left for New York, chasing the kind of success he believed would validate every sacrifice. Donovan's ascent wasn't swift or glamorous at first. He enrolled at a local college and took on odd jobs tutoring, data entry, even moonlighting as a hotel bellhop to pay his bills. He spent weekends studying intricate financial models, teaching himself the nuances of stock markets and start-up investments. Whenever he felt his resolve wavering, he'd think of Ambrose alone in that garage, and the memory fueled his ambition. An early break arrived when he secured an internship with a small but esteemed venture capital firm. The firm was helmed by Robert Caldwell, a legendary figure on Wall Street, known for his near-mythical ability to spot lucrative ventures. Caldwell spotted Donovan's determination and took him under his wing, teaching him that a shrewd mind needed a ruthless edge in the world of business. During this period, Donovan barely slept. He built connections, refined his pitch skills, and absorbed every piece of advice Caldwell offered. His thirst for success became insatiable. But in focusing relentlessly on the climb, Donovan neglected many of life's simple joys. Even basic human connections took a back seat to his goals. Everything shifted the night Donovan met Eliza Morgan at a firm's holiday party. She was a marketing intern from Savannah, Georgia, who spoke with a melodic southern lilt. Eliza stood out in a sea of ambitious suits because she was neither pushy nor desperate to network. She was disarmingly genuine, her hazel eyes lighting up whenever she laughed. Donovan found himself gravitating toward her, initially out of curiosity, then out of something deeper he couldn't yet name. Eliza's warmth offered a comforting contrast to the high-pressure world Donovan inhabited. They exchanged stories that night. She told him about her modest upbringing, her hopes to create meaningful marketing campaigns that would actually help people, and her grandmother's sweet tea recipe that she swore could soothe any soul. Donovan felt his defenses melting in her presence, so much so that when the party ended, he walked her home through the snow-dusted streets of Manhattan, listening to her every word as though it were a secret melody. Though their worlds seemed far apart, Donovan found himself calling her the next day, suggesting they meet for coffee. One cup turned into hours of conversation. For the first time in years, Donovan discovered something beyond profit margins and investment portfolios, the spark of genuine human connection. Eliza and Donovan's relationship bloomed swiftly. Weekends were spent wandering through Central Park or people watching in corner cafes, while weekdays were a juggling act of their demanding jobs. Eliza's unwavering support only fanned the flames of Donovan's ambition. She didn't discourage his late nights or weekends at the office. She believed in him, confident he would strike the right balance in time. But as Donovan's star rose within Caldwell's firm, the demands on him multiplied. He traveled more often, managed bigger deals, and started to outshine even the senior associates. Every success brought a new layer of stress. Eliza, meanwhile, cheered him on from the sidelines, patiently waiting for the day they could celebrate together in less hurried ways. Her faith seemed validated when Donovan proposed. The moment wasn't staged with any corporate flair. Instead, it was a heartfelt confession on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. In the hush of that iconic space, he told her she was the love of his life and asked her to share his future no matter how hectic. Eliza accepted with tears of joy, certain they could face any hurdle as long as they were together. Their wedding was a humble, intimate affair in a small chapel. Donovan's father, Ambrose, shed tears of pride. Eliza's father, George Morgan, came up from Savannah to give his blessing. Amid candles and lilac bouquets, they exchanged vows, each promising to stand by the other through any storm. For a fleeting season, they lived in newlywed bliss, renting a modest but cozy apartment where they shared takeout meals on the couch, whispering about their dreams for the future. Yet marriage did not slow Donovan's ambition. He wanted a life for Eliza that was free of the struggles he'd endured. Determined to provide the best, he dove deeper into the firm's biggest ventures. Caldwell soon promoted him to oversee high-stakes negotiations, praising Donovan's uncanny knack for closing deals under pressure. While Donovan was away on business trips, Eliza spent evenings alone, her eyes drifting to their wedding photo on the mantel. When she texted, he'd often respond hours later, too absorbed in spreadsheets and conference calls. She waited, hopeful that once he made it, life would settle. But the busier Donovan got, the farther he seemed from fulfilling that promise. Soon, the corporate treadmill overshadowed everything. Donovan moved to a new firm, founding a financial platform that caught the attention of high-profile investors. His name landed on magazine covers, branding him as Wall Street's rising star. Eliza tried to remain patient, but each lonely dinner in their quiet apartment chipped at her optimism. They hardly saw each other during Donovan's final push before a massive launch. Nights turned into weeks of absence. Eliza would fall asleep hugging his pillow, waking up to find he'd come home at 3 a.m. and left again by 6 a.m. In phone calls, his voice sounded distant, frayed by deadlines and ambition. She could feel him slipping away, drifting toward a horizon of success that excluded her. On the day of their second wedding anniversary, Eliza prepared a candlelit dinner to remind him of simpler times. She laid out rose petals, chilled a bottle of champagne, and waited. Hours passed with no sign of Donovan. Eventually, just after midnight, he stumbled in, slightly tipsy from celebratory drinks with investors. He offered a rushed apology, but the meal had gone cold, and so had Eliza's hopes. The next morning, she packed her suitcase. Donovan woke up to find a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this anymore. You've already left me behind, whether you see it or not." Their divorce was quick, devoid of scandal or messy battles. Eliza refused any settlement. She wanted no part of the wealth Donovan was amassing. The heartbreak on Donovan's face when she left was genuine, but it was overshadowed by the unstoppable momentum of his career. She flew back to Savannah, her childhood home, and he returned to polishing the empire. He was building, occasionally staring at old wedding photos and wondering if it was all worth it. Over the next few years, Donovan scaled even greater heights. His net worth soared. He had a penthouse with a panoramic view of Manhattan and a second home in Miami. Media outlets called him the unstoppable mogul. Despite the constant swirl of riches and prestige, Donovan felt an unshakable emptiness whenever he glanced at the leftover fragments of his old life, a dusty photo album or a small keepsake Eliza had forgotten to take. Whenever he felt particularly hollow, he told himself that it was the price one pays for greatness. Love, after all, was no guarantee of stability. Numbers and deals, however, never betrayed him, or so he believed. On a chilly November evening, Donovan Lancaster found himself drawn to a newly opened fusion restaurant in Midtown. Known for its muted elegance and strict privacy protocols, it was the ideal spot to momentarily escape the demands of corporate life. After politely declining the VIP booth typically reserved for him, Donovan slipped into a seat by the window. The lights inside the restaurant were warm but subdued, illuminating the polished tables and subdued wallpaper with a soft amber glow. He ordered a small cup of espresso and stared at the cityscape beyond the glass. Cars whooshed by, a few pedestrians, huddled in thick coats, hurried through the crisp wind. The scene stirred a dull ache inside Donovan's chest. Despite his towering reputation on Wall Street, nights like these reminded him how alone he felt. In the back of his mind, he recalled the warmth of Eliza's presence, her lively laughter, her gentle optimism, but he couldn't dwell on that too long. He had buried the past, or so he told himself. Then he saw something that made his breath catch. A solitary figure stood beneath a flickering streetlight, clasping a piece of cardboard. At her feet, 4 small children, identical quadruplets, huddled together, each wearing thin, mismatched jackets. The wind tugged at their clothes, and they looked cold, so terribly cold. Passers-by occasionally dropped coins into an old coffee cup, but most walked on without a glance. Donovan's heart hammered against his ribs. He leaned closer to the window, peering at the woman's face. A rush of disbelief swept over him. Eliza? He blinked rapidly, certain his eyes were deceiving him. She looked gaunt and exhausted, a shell of the vibrant person he once knew. Seeing her so vulnerable, begging for spare change, made his stomach twist with guilt and shock. How had she ended up there, in that dire state? And who were those children? Questions tumbled through his mind, but one thing was clear: he couldn't remain a spectator. He pushed away from the table, leaving the espresso untouched, and hurried toward the exit. All the wealth, power, and prestige he had amassed no longer mattered. In that moment, he saw only Eliza, half frozen on the sidewalk, surrounded by 4 trembling children who might or might not be connected to him. Donovan stepped outside into the biting wind, the chill cutting through his tailored suit like shards of ice. He maneuvered past a group of patrons waiting for a taxi, his gaze laser-focused on the woman under the streetlight. Anxiety coiled in his chest, making it hard to breathe. Eliza noticed him too. The moment their eyes met, hers widened in a mixture of alarm, shame, and something else that might have been longing. Donovan felt his heart lurch at the sight of her pale cheeks and quivering lips. She clutched the cardboard, sign its lettering faded and smeared, while the quadruplets clung to her coat, their frightened eyes darting between their mother and this stranger. "Eliza," he managed to say, though his voice came out faint, nearly drowned by the noise of traffic. He could barely reconcile this woman with the same Eliza who once danced in their cozy apartment, or who laughed at his off-key singing during lazy Sunday mornings. She didn't reply immediately. Instead, she lowered her gaze, as if bracing for a blow. The children, close to tears, pressed closer to her legs. Donovan felt a pang of guilt, remembering how he had pursued success so relentlessly that he'd lost all sense of real priorities. How many calls had he ignored from unknown numbers? How many times had he shielded himself with an assistant to avoid personal disruptions? "Donovan," she finally whispered. There was disbelief in her tone, as though she had never expected to see him again. A faint tremor ran through her, part shiver from the cold, part tremor from fear or humiliation. He swallowed against the tightness in his throat. "It's too cold for all of you to be out here," he said, gently taking in the children's thin jackets and Eliza's ragged coat. "Please, come inside. Let me help." For a heartbeat, it looked like Eliza might refuse. She glanced down at her quadruplets, who were shaking and red-faced. Resignation flickered in her eyes. Refusing Donovan's offer meant another night of uncertainty and cold. Slowly she gave a tight nod, unable to find the words. Donovan guided them with a trembling hand, hoping the warmth of the restaurant might momentarily shield them from the harsh reality on the street. Inside the restaurant, the maitre d', Anthony King, recognized Donovan immediately. Concern flashed across Anthony's face when he saw the shivering children and the haunted look in Eliza's eyes. Donovan kept his voice low as he requested a private alcove out of sight from the other diners. Despite the hush of the room, curious glances still flickered their way after all. It wasn't every day someone of Donovan's stature walked in with a woman in tattered clothes and 4 identical children. They settled into a corner booth, where plush velvet cushions clashed starkly with the children's worn attire. Immediately, a few staff members bustled over with blankets, hot chocolate, and water. The quadruplets stared with wide-eyed wonder, as though they had entered a different universe. Eliza placed the battered cardboard sign at her feet, her shoulders hunched as if she expected judgment. Donovan slid into the seat beside her, adrenaline and dread coursing through him. He had 1,000 questions, but the first words out of his mouth were gentle. "Are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" He glanced at her wrists, her face, searching for bruises or signs of deeper harm. Eliza shook her head. "No, we're just cold," she said, voice trembling with more than just temperature. One of the children let out a muffled cough, prompting Eliza to drape a fresh blanket around the little one's shoulders. Watching her maternal care made Donovan's heart twist with regret. How had it come to this? He wondered silently. When their drinks arrived, Donovan waited, letting Eliza and the quadruplets drink in silence. The children clutched the warm mugs, sipping cautiously, eyes darting around in amazement. Donovan's mind buzzed with the singular, urgent question he hadn't yet dared to voice. Finally, when the children had calmed, Donovan turned to Eliza. "I don't understand. Who are these kids?" He paused, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Eliza, please, are they mine?" Eliza inhaled shakily, her gaze shifting to the children. Each tiny face, so similar, held traces of Donovan's features, the angle of their cheekbones, the slight dimple in the chin. When she looked up, tears glistened on her lashes. "Yes," she whispered. "They're ours, Donovan. All 4 of them." The room seemed to tilt. Donovan felt a rush of dizziness, his stomach lurching. 4 children, quadruplets. A wave of remorse, shock, and a strange surge of protectiveness swept over him. He gripped the edge of the table. How could this?" Eliza's voice broke. "It happened after I left you. I didn't even know I was pregnant until I was on my own. I thought you wouldn't want them, or me." Donovan stared at the children, who were now quietly sipping their hot chocolate, oblivious to the magnitude of the revelation unfolding around them. His eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall in public. "Eliza, I'm so sorry," he managed. "If I'd known," he trailed off, words failing him. There were no quick apologies that could undo 6 lost years. Donovan forced himself to take a steadying breath. How old are they? He asked, though dread was already coiling in his gut. Eliza's shoulders sagged. They turned 6 last month, she replied, voice nearly inaudible. Donovan did the math instantly. They'd separated almost 7 years ago. The timeline fit too perfectly, each new realization cutting deeper than the last. You never told me you were pregnant, he said, eyes brimming with remorse. Part of him wanted to lash out in frustration. Why hadn't she come to him earlier? But he fought down the urge. Anger would solve nothing. Instead, his voice shook with quiet desperation. Why didn't you reach out? I would have. He stopped, remembering how closed off he had become, how even his father rarely got through his protective layers of security. Eliza's lower lip trembled, tears gathering in her eyes. I didn't know right away. And when I did find out, everything felt so hopeless. You were everywhere in the media, busy, important. I convinced myself you would see the children as an obstacle to your success. She swallowed hard. I tried once, but your assistant brushed me off. After that, I let my pride and my anger get the best of me. Donovan's chest constricted at the mention of his old staff's gatekeeping. He recalled how he'd practically demanded isolation to maximize efficiency. Countless calls and messages had been filtered through unfeeling layers of professionalism. How many crucial chances to reconnect had he missed? In a trembling voice, Eliza continued, I held on as long as I could, odd jobs, help from my dad. But when he fell ill, his medical bills swallowed everything. We lost our place to live. She glanced at their 4 children, who were now finishing their hot chocolates but still huddled close. We ended up with nowhere else to go, so I had to beg. It was the only way to keep them fed. Donovan's heart twisted painfully at her confession. He gazed at his children, and saw the shadows of neglect in their thin frames, their tired eyes. Anger, guilt, and fierce protectiveness warred inside him. All the money he had made, all the luxury penthouses and boardroom triumphs felt meaningless in the face of their suffering. He reached out, placing a tentative hand over Eliza's. I can't take back the years we lost, but please, let me help you now. Let me help them. She stared at his hand. Tears slipped down her cheeks, each one a silent testament to desperation. I don't know if I trust you, she whispered, her voice raw, but I don't have a choice. The kids can't keep living on the streets. Donovan nodded, voice thick. Then let me prove it. We'll leave here together, and I'll give you a place to stay. Whatever you need, food, clothes, a doctor for the kids. Anything. Eliza glanced at their children, whose eyes were now locked on Donovan's face, a mix of curiosity and tentative hope. Finally, she exhaled shakily. All right, she murmured. We'll come with you. Relief coursed through Donovan like a wave. He beckoned the maître-d' and discreetly settled the bill, leaving a generous tip. Then, with gentle urgency, he guided Eliza and the quadruplets outside, where a car service swiftly arrived to ferry them to his penthouse. The entire ride, Donovan's mind swirled with an avalanche of thoughts. How to care for them, how to protect them, how to atone for what he hadn't known and for what he had inadvertently caused. As Manhattan's lights whizzed by, he felt 4 pairs of small eyes on him, each child too exhausted or too uncertain to speak. He wanted to say 1,000 things, to promise them a better life, to vow that he would never let them suffer again. But for now, he stayed silent, letting them rest and clinging to one inescapable truth. This was his second chance, and he would do anything to keep them safe. They arrived at a sleek high rise, the doorman, Peterson, bowing respectfully as Donovan led Eliza and the quadruplets inside. The children huddled close to their mother, overawed by the chandeliers and marble floors. Donovan guided them through a private elevator that opened directly into his penthouse, a sprawling space lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. offering a glittering view of Manhattan's skyline. He hurried to gather blankets, offering them to the children, whose names he learned one by one: Daniel, Daniela, Donovan Jr., who called himself DJ, and Diana. Each face held a piece of him, and with every glance, he felt the weight of 6 lost years pressing down on his soul. Eliza lingered near the door, as if unsure she belonged in such a lavish space. "Are you sure this is okay?" she asked, voice wavering. Donovan nodded, swallowing the ache in his throat. "I want you to stay as long as you need. I want to be here for the kids." She offered a brief nod, looking around with a mixture of relief and lingering heartbreak. "Thank you." The first night in Donovan's penthouse was surreal. He set the children up in 2 guest rooms, rummaging for spare clothes and blankets while ordering a late-night grocery delivery. None of the children had much to say. Exhaustion and uncertainty dulled their usual chatter. Once the quadruplets were settled, Donovan and Eliza found themselves alone in the dimly lit living area. They sat across from each other, 2 people who had once promised to build a life together, now fractured by years of silence and misunderstandings. The city lights flickered on their faces, a silent chorus of what might have been. Donovan finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of every unasked question. "Why didn't you try again?" "Just once more?" Eliza stared into her lap. "I was hurt. You were on every magazine cover, rubbing shoulders with billionaires. It felt like you'd left me behind. And when life got harder, I didn't want to be the desperate ex-wife begging for scraps of your success." His throat tightened. "They're my children. I should have been there." A tear slid down Eliza's cheek. "It's too late for what-ifs. We have to deal with the present. They need stability, food, a home." He leaned closer, eyes wet. "They'll have it, I promise." Morning arrived with a flurry of activity. Donovan, unaccustomed to having children under his roof, scrambled to figure out breakfast. He placed a call to Harriet Fry, his longtime personal assistant, requesting groceries suitable for a family. Within an hour, eggs, cereal, fruit, and other essentials arrived. Eliza took charge in the kitchen, frying eggs and toasting bread, while Donovan found himself in a state of wide-eyed wonder at the scene, a makeshift family morning routine unfolding in his once sterile penthouse. The children ate hungrily, their faces lighting up at the simple meal. Donovan tried to start conversations about their favorite games, what subjects they liked, but they were still shy, uncertain how to address the father they'd only just met. Meanwhile, Eliza moved about with practiced efficiency, though Donovan sensed her underlying unease. She was in an environment she used to only read about: extreme wealth, city vistas, yet the path that brought her here was paved with heartbreak and desperation. After breakfast, Donovan gently insisted on taking the quadruplets for a medical checkup. Eliza agreed, admitting they hadn't seen a doctor in months due to insurance issues. He arranged for a private physician to visit the penthouse. The children underwent basic exams, revealing mild malnutrition and general fatigue, nothing beyond repair with a healthy regimen. Donovan privately vowed they'd never know hunger or insecurity again. Throughout the day, Eliza fielded the kids' questions. "Where are we now? Why is it so big? Is this Daddy's house?" She offered patient answers, though her own questions churned unanswered in her mind. Could she trust Donovan not to repeat the past? What would this new dynamic mean for her independence? By evening, Donovan gathered everyone for a simple dinner takeout pizzas. Sitting together, the children gradually loosened up, giggling over the cheesy slices. Donovan felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest, a sense of belonging he hadn't tasted in years. That night, Donovan retreated to his study, a sleek room with built-in bookshelves and panoramic windows. He stared at the city skyline, replaying the events of the last 24 hours. The quiet hum of the penthouse felt different with Eliza and the kids asleep in the rooms down the hall, like a house that had finally become a home. But guilt overshadowed his newfound contentment. He wondered about Eliza's hardships, the birthdays he missed, the times she must have cried herself to sleep while struggling to feed 4 children. The thought made him feel unworthy of their presence. He resolved to do something, anything, to repay that debt. Scrolling through his phone, he searched for lawyers who specialized in family trusts, determined to secure the children's future. He also looked up real estate listings, considering a more modest place where they might all fit more comfortably. If Eliza was willing, over the following weeks, Donovan's life changed radically. He cut back on travel, delegating tasks to trusted executives. Board members raised eyebrows, but he stood firm, privately revealing that he had unexpected family obligations. He poured resources into ensuring the Quadruplets had everything they needed: clothes, tutoring, a stable routine. Eliza watched these transformations with a guarded heart. She'd been burned before by his singular focus on work, yet she couldn't deny his genuine efforts. He volunteered for school runs, sat with the children at dinner, and even rearranged high-profile meetings to attend their appointments. Each small act chipped away at the wall she'd built to protect herself. Their relationship, however, remained complicated. They were no longer the starry-eyed newlyweds. Too much pain had accumulated, too many years lost. Donovan sensed her hesitancy whenever he stood too close or offered a gentle touch. He understood that trust couldn't be rebuilt overnight, and he resolved to be patient, letting his actions speak for him. Meanwhile, Robert Caldwell, Donovan's mentor, took note of his protégé's uncharacteristic absences. One afternoon, Caldwell confronted him in a glass-walled conference room at Lancaster Holdings. "Donovan," he said, his tone tinged with concern, "you've been stepping back. Are you ill, or is something else going on?" Donovan paused, weighing how much to disclose. Finally he answered, "I found out I have 4 children, Robert. Quadruplets. Their mother was my ex-wife, Eliza. They've been living in desperate circumstances, and I'm trying to make things right." Caldwell's usually stern face softened in surprise. "My God, that's quite the development. Are you sure you can juggle that and your responsibilities here? This place doesn't run itself." Donovan's jaw tightened. "I'm not abandoning my company, but my family comes first. I'll delegate, restructure, do whatever it takes to balance both." His mentor studied him, then nodded. "Family is important. I just hope you won't lose yourself or the business in the process." Donovan exhaled. "I've already lost too much. I can't lose them again." As Donovan invested in a quieter life, Eliza found herself acclimating to the penthouse's luxuries with a mixture of relief and embarrassment. Sometimes she gazed out the window, marveling at how far she was from that street corner with a sign. Other times she felt guilt tugging at her because so many homeless mothers never got such a miracle. She found herself longing for a purpose, something to contribute, rather than just being the mother of Donovan's children under his roof. When she mentioned these feelings, Donovan gently suggested, "You could look into volunteering or working again. I'll take care of the kids' needs. We can hire help if you want." Eliza hesitated. "I just don't want to be seen as your dependent. I fought so hard to be self-reliant." His expression was earnest. "I understand. Take whatever time you need. I'm not expecting anything, Eliza, except that you and the kids feel safe." Her heart constricted at the sincerity in his voice. The Donovan she once knew wouldn't have offered time so freely. Perhaps he really had changed. Weeks turned into months. The Quadruplets adjusted to a stable routine, their playful personalities shining through. Daniel devoured library books on dinosaurs and space, while Daniela filled sketchpads with colorful drawings. DJ loved anything physical: skateboarding, basketball, running around constantly coaxing Donovan to join. Diana was the shy observer, quietly watching her siblings, but she blossomed when Donovan read stories to her, her eyes lighting up at each page turn. Their father, once a ghost in their lives, was now a devoted presence, helping with schoolwork, playing board games, and learning the humor in their 6-year-old jokes. At night, Donovan often felt a bittersweet tug, thinking of how different life would have been if he'd known about them from the start. One crisp Saturday morning, Donovan proposed a family outing to Central Park. Eliza agreed, albeit cautiously. They strolled among the fall foliage, the children racing ahead, squealing with excitement. Couples walked dogs, buskers played violins, and a gentle breeze carried laughter through the air. Donovan caught Eliza's eye, and for a moment they both remembered simpler days before success and heartbreak drove them apart. Back at the penthouse that evening, Eliza tucked the children into their beds, each with their own cherished bedtime story. She'd barely stepped out of the last room when she found Donovan waiting in the hallway, a pensive look on his face. He gestured for her to follow him to the living area. They settled on the couch. City lights sparkled through the windows. Donovan cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about the future, about us, about the kids. We can't stay in limbo forever." She studied his face, her own heart pounding. "I know," she replied softly. "What do you have in mind?" He laced his fingers together, searching for the right words. "I'd like us to move somewhere that feels more like a family home, not just my penthouse. Maybe a townhouse, or a house in a quieter neighborhood. I think the kids would benefit from that." Eliza nodded. "That sounds nice. But are you sure you can step away from the city's pulse?" A small smile curved his lips. "I'm sure. Priorities change. I want them to have space, maybe even a yard. We can stay here until we find the right place, but I wanted your input." Her eyes glistened. "I appreciate that." True to his word, Donovan enlisted a realtor to search for family-friendly homes in Manhattan and nearby neighborhoods. During viewings, the kids dashed through empty rooms, imagining each space as a playground of possibilities. Eliza was more reserved, torn between excitement and apprehension. She feared that moving into a new home with Donovan might signal a level of commitment she wasn't sure they were ready for, but Donovan was patient. He let her weigh each option, from a charming brownstone near a good school to a modern townhouse with a small garden. Eventually they settled on a historic, renovated brownstone with enough bedrooms and a warm, lived-in feel. The children called it the treasure house, enthralled by its nook-filled layout and a modest backyard where they could play. The move was a whirlwind of boxes, packing tape, and rummaging through old belongings. Eliza discovered bits of her past life, with Donovan photos from their wedding, souvenirs from vacations. She found herself alternating between nostalgia and sadness. Still, she pushed forward, wanting to give her children a better environment than a borrowed penthouse. On moving day, Donovan rolled up his sleeves, loading boxes into vans alongside professional movers. The kids bounced around, excitedly laying claim to rooms. By evening, the family was spread out on the living room floor, sharing pizza as they surveyed the half-unpacked space. Even in disarray, the new house felt like a fresh chapter. Life in the brownstone settled into a comfortable rhythm. Donovan curated his work schedule to attend parent-teacher meetings, pediatric checkups, and even a few weekend volunteer events at the children's school. Eliza, meanwhile, found a part-time position at a non-profit that helped homeless families, a cause she deeply connected with, given her own recent struggles. The job gave her a sense of purpose, a way to turn her painful experiences into empathy for others. In the evenings, they gathered for dinner at the large oak table in the dining room. Some nights were chaotic, spilled milk, crayons rolling off the table, but Donovan cherished each moment. Eliza observed his genuine investment in fatherhood and felt her guarded heart soften inch by inch. Nevertheless, a deeper reconciliation between them was far from guaranteed. They spoke amicably about day-to-day issues, but they avoided the raw wound of their past. Apologies had been exchanged, but the question remained, could they truly become a couple again, or were they simply co-parents sharing a home? One evening, Donovan returned from a particularly grueling board meeting, tension evident in his shoulders. He found Eliza in the living room, reading a bedtime story to Diana. The gentle murmur of her voice eased the knots in his chest. After the story ended, Eliza kissed Diana's forehead and flicked off the light. When she emerged, Donovan mustered a smile. "Long day?" she asked, noticing the tired lines on his face. He nodded. "But seeing you with the kids, it makes it better." He motioned toward the kitchen where a kettle was warming. "Care for some tea?" "I could use a break." They sat at the kitchen island, sipping steaming mugs of chamomile. The dim light cast soft shadows, creating a bubble of intimacy. Donovan gazed at her, memories of their early relationship flooding back of late nights in their cramped apartment, whispering plans for a future that never came to be. "Eliza," he began quietly, "I need to say something." He set his mug down. "I'm not just doing all this out of guilt. I care about you. I care about the kids. I want us to be a family again, not just in name." Her eyes dropped. "I know you're trying, Donovan, but it's difficult to forget how you once pushed me aside for your ambitions." He reached across the counter, gently placing his hand on hers. "I'm different now. I learned the hard way that success is hollow without people to share it with. I lost you once. I don't want to lose you again." Eliza blinked back tears. "I need time to trust that." His voice was steady but soft. "Take as much time as you need. I'll be here." As winter gave way to spring, the family's days were filled with new beginnings. The Quadruplets enrolled in sports and clubs, each finding an activity that resonated with them. Daniel joined a science club, Daniela dove into an art workshop, DJ thrived in a junior basketball league, and Diana took up piano lessons under a gentle instructor named Miss S. Jang. On weekends, Donovan and Eliza found themselves rushing between games, recitals, and art exhibitions. The camaraderie of parenting pulled them closer, forging a bond that transcended the bitterness that once defined their separation. Occasionally, they exchanged a look, a spark that hinted at the love they once shared. Still, old habits threatened to resurface. When a major deal came up at Lancaster Holdings, Donovan nearly found himself slipping back into punishing schedules. But this time he recognized the pattern. He delegated tasks, refused late-night meetings, and was home in time for DJ's basketball championship. Eliza noticed and quietly acknowledged the difference, her guarded heart thawing a bit more. One Saturday, George Morgan, Eliza's father, visited from Savannah. He'd heard about Eliza and the children's reversal of fortune and wanted to see it for himself. Upon stepping into the brownstone, he was greeted by 4 energetic grandchildren showing off their rooms, and Donovan, who extended a handshake and a heartfelt apology for how things had turned out years ago. George studied Donovan, scrutinizing every gesture and word. By the end of the weekend, he seemed somewhat reassured, seeing genuine affection and responsibility in Donovan's actions. Over a home-cooked meal, George raised a toast with sweet tea, remarking that maybe, just maybe, the couple could rewrite their story. Later, George pulled Eliza aside. "I never wanted you to suffer the way you did," he said, voice thick, "but it seems Donovan's learned his lesson. I see how he looks at you and the kids. Don't let fear keep you from finding happiness again." Eliza embraced her father, tears filling her eyes. She realized she was no longer alone in her cautious steps toward forgiveness. On a balmy spring evening, Donovan surprised Eliza with a babysitter for the Quadruplets, urging her to join him for a night out just the two of them. She hesitated, but something in his earnest smile convinced her. She dressed in a simple but elegant navy blue dress, feeling a flutter in her stomach reminiscent of their early dates. They dined at a small, romantic Italian restaurant, far from the glitz Donovan's status usually attracted. Candlelight danced on the walls as they shared homemade pasta and soft conversation. A violinist played in the corner, adding an undercurrent of sweet melancholy to the evening. Halfway through dinner, Eliza realized she hadn't relaxed like this in years. Donovan, for his part, looked simultaneously nervous and hopeful. He talked about the children, his charitable initiatives. He was increasingly funding programs for single mothers and homeless shelters, discreetly inspired by Eliza's past struggles. After dessert, Donovan took a deep breath. "I know we're not back to where we once were," he said, gazing into her eyes, "but I want you to know how much I cherish every step we've taken. Thank you for letting me try." Eliza felt her heart stirring. Tonight was wonderful. One missed this. They left the restaurant arm in arm, walking slowly through the softly lit streets, exchanging memories and half-whispered hopes for the future. Back at the brownstone, the babysitter reported that the quadruplets were fast asleep. Donovan saw the tiredness in Eliza's eyes, but also a quiet contentment. They lingered in the hallway, the overhead light casting long shadows. Neither seemed ready to part ways for the night. Eliza spoke first, voice hushed. "I had a good time." He leaned closer, heart pounding. "So did I." A moment passed, charged with possibility. Then Eliza stood on her tiptoes and pressed a gentle kiss to Donovan's cheek. It wasn't an all-consuming kiss of reunited lovers, but it was a start, a tender gesture, bridging the gap between them. Donovan closed his eyes, letting the warmth of that brief contact wash over him. "Good night," she whispered, stepping away toward her bedroom. He watched her go, gratitude and hope mingling in his chest. The days unfurled into early summer, and with the approach of the children's break from school, Donovan proposed a short vacation. He rented a rustic cottage by a lake upstate, hoping to give the quadruplets a taste of nature beyond city streets. Eliza agreed, intrigued and nervous about sharing extended downtime as a family. The cottage stood near pine forests and a pristine lake, reflecting the sky like a mirror. The kids squealed at the sight of rowboats and a small dock stretching into the water. They spent mornings fishing, afternoons swimming, and evenings roasting marshmallows by a crackling fire. Laughter echoed across the water, a stark contrast to the tear-filled days of their past. At night, after the kids were tucked in, Donovan and Eliza sat on the porch. The moon glowed, and crickets serenaded them. Donovan's heartbeat drummed with an idea he'd carried for weeks. He took Eliza's hand, his voice low. "I know we're forging something new, but I also want to rectify the past. Eliza, we never had a chance to do things right. We had love once, but I destroyed it with my neglect. Now we have this life, our children, a second chance." Her eyes shimmered under the moonlight. "I'm grateful for all you've done, but I'm still terrified sometimes." He squeezed her hand gently. "I understand. Fear has its place, but I believe in us. I'd like to ask you to renew our vows. Someday, when you're ready." Tears rimmed Eliza's eyes. She thought of their first wedding, how hopeful they'd been, how quickly it fell apart. But now there was something stronger underpinning their bond, the lessons learned from pain, and 4 children who embodied both of them. After a pause, she nodded, wiping her tears. "I'd like that too. Maybe not immediately, but let's work toward it. Together." A small, relieved smile graced Donovan's lips. "That's all I need to hear." On the last evening of their lake trip, the family gathered around a bonfire. The quadruplets sang silly songs they'd learned at school. Eliza and Donovan joined in, voices blending under the star-filled sky. When the flames died down and the children dozed off, Eliza and Donovan carried them inside to their bunk beds. With the cottage finally quiet, Donovan and Eliza found themselves on the small dock, the water lapping at the wooden posts. He gently slipped an arm around her waist. She leaned into him, letting the stillness speak louder than words. The old resentments, the wasted years, they felt distant compared to the calm certainty of that moment. Returning to the city, they resumed their routines, but with a renewed sense of unity. The vow renewal plan took shape slowly. Eliza imagined something small and intimate, just close friends, the children and family. Donovan agreed wholeheartedly, unwilling to turn it into a media spectacle. When Robert Caldwell heard about their intentions, he offered Donovan a piece of fatherly advice. Don't do it to prove anything to the world. Do it because you both want a shared future. You've built empires, but the real victory is building a family that endures. Donovan couldn't have agreed more. He scaled back further at work, delegating day-to-day operations so he could focus on philanthropic endeavors and fatherhood. Eliza's non-profit job thrived. She helped families transition out of homelessness, drawing from her own ordeal to connect with struggling mothers. Each time she guided someone toward resources, she felt a spark of meaning, a sense of purpose. Summer melted into early fall. One crisp afternoon, Donovan slipped away with Eliza to choose her vow renewal ring. She selected a modest piece, a simple gold band with a small diamond. "I don't need anything extravagant," she said, smoothing her fingertips over the ring's surface. "This is beautiful." Donovan felt a lump in his throat. He recalled the ring he'd given her years ago. He'd spent every penny of his savings to get it, only for their marriage to unravel. This time was different. They'd been tested by life, and they were making a conscious choice to step forward together. The ceremony took place in a lush garden just outside Manhattan, with towering oak trees and a small gazebo draped in white flowers. Only a handful of people attended: Eliza's father, George, Donovan's father, Ambrose, who had recovered emotionally over the years, Robert Caldwell, and a few close friends from Eliza's non-profit and Donovan's inner circle. The Quadruplets acted as ring-bearers, each proudly carrying a small satin pillow. Donovan wore a simple black suit, and Eliza wore a flowing ivory dress with lace sleeves. As she walked down a short aisle lined with scattered petals, Donovan felt a rush of awe. The officiant spoke gently of second chances and the resilience of love. They exchanged vows that acknowledged their past failings and looked to the future with unwavering hope. Each promised to protect, cherish, and remain present, a stark contrast to the grand but ultimately empty promises of their first wedding. When they sealed their commitment with a kiss, the children cheered, releasing handfuls of petals into the air. The small reception afterward was intimate, a buffet table under twinkling lights, gentle acoustic music, and heartfelt toasts. Robert Caldwell offered a short speech. "I've witnessed Donovan conquer the business world, but this standing with Eliza and their beautiful children is a greater triumph. May they continue to teach us that redemption is possible, no matter how far we wander." Eliza's father also spoke, his voice quivering. He thanked Donovan for finding his way back and praised Eliza's strength. The Quadruplets performed a sweet little song they'd practiced, ending in giggles when DJ forgot half the lyrics. When the sun dipped below the horizon, the newly recommitted couple danced on the lawn, the children hopping around them. It was a moment of collective peace, a reminder of how fragile and miraculous second chances can be. In the weeks that followed, life continued now with a deeper sense of unity. Donovan refined his role at Lancaster Holdings so he could dedicate more time to the family. He also used his resources to amplify Eliza's non-profit, funding shelters and job training programs for homeless parents. Their philanthropic endeavors became a shared mission, reflecting both their gratitude and the wounds they'd overcome. Yet, the vow renewal didn't magic away every conflict. They still argued over small parenting decisions like bedtimes or screen time, and big ones, like whether to enroll the children in private or public school. But each argument ended with a willingness to listen and compromise, a stark improvement from the communication vacuum of their past. One evening, Donovan stepped out of his study to find Eliza tucking the kids in. She read them a story about bravery and kindness, her voice steady and comforting. Donovan lingered in the hallway, struck by the warmth radiating from that small tableau. Eventually, Eliza noticed him and beckoned him inside. They finished the story together, each child snuggled under soft blankets. After they turned out the lights, Donovan followed Eliza into the corridor, where the gentle glow of a table lamp illuminated her features. She smiled softly. "Thank you, Donovan." He tilted his head. "For what?" "For becoming the father they deserve, the partner I need. I see how hard you've worked to make up for lost time." He gently touched her cheek. "It's a debt I'll spend the rest of my life repaying, gladly." She leaned in, their foreheads touching in a tender moment of closeness. "We're in this together now." Seasons passed, and the family continued to grow closer. The quadruplets found their footing in school, each developing distinct talents and quirks. Eliza discovered new layers of fulfillment in her work, helping mothers overcome hardships not unlike her own. Donovan, once driven by raw ambition, found joy in the everyday realities of fatherhood: soccer matches, family dinners, and Sunday picnics in the park. Eventually, on an unremarkable weeknight, the Lancasters sat around the dinner table, discussing their days. The kids chattered excitedly about an upcoming field trip, while Donovan and Eliza exchanged knowing smiles. It struck Donovan then how these small moments defined the happiness he'd been chasing all along, one that money alone could never buy. After the children scurried off to prepare for bed, Eliza and Donovan lingered, finishing the dishes side by side. Suds and water dripped from plates as they laughed over some silly remark DJ had made. Eliza paused, turned to him and said, "You know, if I could go back in time, I'd still choose to go through every hardship, every heartache, just to end up here with you and them." His heart swelled. "Me too," he whispered, slipping an arm around her waist. "1,000 times. True miracles often unfold in the cracks where broken hearts meet second chances." Donovan and Eliza's story shows us that behind the glare of success can lie a loneliness only love can fill. When fate reunites them this time, with 4 children who hold pieces of each parent's soul, they discover the power of forgiveness and the beauty of rebuilding what was once lost. If their journey touched you, please share this video and let someone else find hope in their story. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another heartwarming tale. Because in a world that moves too fast, stories like Donovan and Eliza's remind us that redemption and real love are worth waiting for, worth fighting for, and worth sharing with everyone who needs a bit of hope.